Yeah, look, I came here when I was young. As you said, I was 10 years old, and it was a new life for me with my mother. We'd come to Australia from Croatia, so it was a new beginning. And my very first day, we arrived in Melbourne, Australia, on a Sunday morning at about 10 o'clock in the morning. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was watching my very first football game in Australia, and I loved it so much. I never turned back. I fell in love with the game, with the club that I supported, Melbourne, Croatia. And, I've followed the game ever since. And I've been very lucky because, as I said, football has been my life.
The VAR Show. The one place for your weekly football update.
So hello, very warm welcome to VAR Show, the show which talks about all the big major football leagues in detail. Today we have Mr. Branko Culina with us. So Branko has had a very successful playing career and even a coaching career. He has coached the likes of Sydney FC and Newcastle Jets, to name a few, and also was induced into the Football Federation of Australia Hall of Fame in 2019. So without wasting much time, I'd like to first thank Branko for coming on the show. Thank you and welcome to the show. And I would like to begin by asking you, how are you and what are you doing these days?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. These days I'm pretty much got plenty of spare time. I'm doing a little bit of work for as a technical advisor for a private football school. It's private school rather, where we're trying to develop football, particularly with the young boys from the age of probably 6 to 18 years of age.
Definitely, and that's quite a good work, developing the youth. And I'll talk about your career as a whole now. And you have had a very illustrious career as a player and as a coach. And how has the journey been for you?
It's been, look, I've been very fortunate to be doing something in my life that I enjoy doing, and football has been my whole life, first as a player from the age of 16 at senior football. I finished playing relatively young at 30 and took up coaching immediately. And for the next 30 years I was coaching. So I've had a long career in both in football, a very enjoyable one. Difficult in Australia because, as you know, in Australia we have a lot of other sporting codes, and football is not always been as popular as it has been as some of the other codes. So it's been a real battle with other codes, but I think we've done well considering the difficulty we've had in with the game.
Definitely, and in a personal note, you moved to Australia when you were 10, I think. And was football a gateway maybe to socialize and get the thought away from that you had to move from maybe your home country to Australia?
Yeah, look, I came here when I was young. As you said, I was 10 years old, and it was a new life for me with my mother. We'd come to Australia from Croatia, so it was a new beginning. And my very first day, we arrived in Melbourne, Australia, on a Sunday morning at about 10 o'clock in the morning. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was watching my very first football game in Australia, and I loved it so much. I never turned back. I fell in love with the game, with the club that I supported, Melbourne, Croatia. And, I've followed the game ever since. And I've been very lucky because, as I said, football has been my life.
Definitely. And after your playing career, you said you retired relatively young and you moved to coaching almost instantly, without break or something, and you moved directly. And was it something you always planned that you want to have a career in coaching, or was it a spontaneous decision?
It's hard to say whether I wanted to be involved in coaching. I wanted to be involved in the game, I wasn't quite sure where the coaching was for me. Coaching is probably next best thing if you can't play. And I had my difficulties as a player with asthma, and my eyesight wasn't the best. So I knew pretty early on in my career that I wouldn't play for a long time. So I thought, what would I do if I wasn't playing? And coaching was obviously the next best thing for me. And I thought, I'll give it a go, see how it goes, and we'll take it from there. And I was very fortunate that I ended up coaching the club that I had played for. They gave me the opportunity at a young age. I was only about 29 when I started coaching, and things took off from there.
Definitely, like you said, your club gave you an opportunity at such a young age. Do you see that happening today? Like any club giving anyone at such a young age?
Look, it's a little bit different these days, but it is happening. What we're seeing a lot around the world, not only in Australia but around the world, is a lot of ex-players are getting the opportunities at their club, where not necessarily straight away as a head coaches, but maybe in an assistant role or a specialised role. And I think that's good for the game. It's good for the players that have an ambition to get into coaching. It is happening. Back in my days, it was one of those things that, as I said, was a rarity. But I was very glad that the club gave me the opportunity, and from there on, as I said, the other doors opened for me.
Definitely. And like on a personal level, what was the biggest difference for you that you felt from moving from playing into coaching?
I suppose the difference was when you're a player, you only think about yourself. Even if you lose, if you perform well and you've given everything you have, you're relatively pleased with the outcome. On the other hand, when you become a coach, it's all about group. It's all about a team. It's all about everybody. You start taking more responsibility. You're accountable for not only yourself, but your players, the club, the supporters. So it becomes a big responsibility. And some people are unable to handle that responsibilities. They find it difficult to the transition from playing into coaching, where you've got to look at the big picture, not only, what's best for you, but what's best for people around you.
Definitely. And like you managed in multiple decades, starting from 1989. Like, did you have to adapt yourself, to stay relevant in the coaching game?
Yeah, look, I started taking coaching courses when I was still a player, because I believe that if you start young and you get to, it helps your game when you understand how a coach has to think, how he has to prepare, how he has to deal with players. When you're a player and you do that, it helps you within your game. So when I stopped playing and went into coaching, I was already aware of some of the responsibilities, and it made it easier for me to get into coaching. So I would advise a lot of players that are still playing but have ambitions possibly to get into coaching to do so while they're still playing, because not only will it prepare them for later on when they do get into coaching and they'll have better understanding, but while they're still playing, it may develop and may help their game as well.
Definitely. And like I wanted to ask you another thing. For the time span that you have been a coach, how has the game evolved?
Well, the game is changed. I mean, look, we're always looking for new ways how we can develop the game. How can we evolve? How can the game evolve? The game's changed in as far as that today's professionals have more time. They have better resources. The game has become a lot quicker than what it used to be. Not necessarily better, because I believe that in the old days we had some outstanding, skillful players that were in many cases self-taught. These days we have a much quicker game, more professional game. It's even a more physical, demanding game. Maybe we see less skills as well. I'm afraid that at times we're trying to produce robotic players rather than players who will be allowed to express themselves, which is what we had back 30, 40 years ago. When you look at the world game now, it's difficult to see too many players that have that skill that maybe some of the players had back 20, 30 or more years ago. But definitely the game is a lot quicker now and it's more demanding physically.
Definitely. And again, another question, I always ask managers who are involved in like multiple leagues, like you managed in the NSL and also the A League, which was rebranded. Was it just a rebranding or was it a shift in maybe ideology of how football is?
Yeah, look, I think in Australia it was more to do with the fact that the NSL, National Soccer League, had run its game. The time was for a change. We were losing crowds. There wasn't a great deal of media interest in the game in our country, and we needed to rebrand it. We needed to do something different by starting out again, so to speak, with the A League. We were able to start all over. Unfortunately, I didn't think we handled it very well from an administrative point of view, because what we wanted to do was, we didn't change the game, because a lot of the players, in fact, majority of the players that played NSL started playing A-League. We also were able to get some overseas foreign players, name players into the A-League. But don't forget, we also had that in the old NSL. We had some fantastic players in the old NSL that came from Europe or South America. So that wasn't new either. I think what was new, that what the people that ran the game wanted to see, that we tried to cater for a new group of people to follow the game, which was a good idea. But at the same time, what we did wrong, in my opinion, was that we forgot about the people that kept the game going for over a century. And instead of gaining new people, we got new people, but we lost the old one. So in the end, we didn't really progress the way we should have progressed.
So in your opinion, again your own personal opinion, how should have they gone about stuff?
I think the idea of trying something different, and what we did in Australia, we basically said, okay, we will have teams, rather than representing certain cultures and history or ethnic groups, we will have clubs representing various cities and regions in Australia. I don't think that was such a bad thing, but what we failed to do was bring along the history and the culture of the previous 100 years of football existence. And they felt that those people and clubs felt that they were ignored and refused to support the A-League. When I say refused, not all of them, but a great deal, a number of them did. So we didn't get the benefits of having the old and the new. I just think the way it was done was wrong. The idea, I believe, was reasonable to start off with, but we do have a problem in Australia at the moment where we don't have promotion and relegation, and what it has created is a division between where we want to, where we are at the moment, where we should be in the future. Every country in the world almost has promotion relegation. What it does is not only keep all the clubs on their toes, but it gives opportunity to new clubs coming through. What we have in Australia is we have no opportunity, we have no second division, we have no opportunity for newer clubs coming through to be involved in this new competition, unless the governing body decides that we will increase the league from 10 to 12 to 14 and so forth. But again, very few, in fact, no club so far that existed in the old NSL has been given the opportunity to be part of the new football, as we call it.
Definitely, and another thing that you have raised your voice against is the youth development in Australia. So, what is, in your opinion, what is going wrong with it?
Well, there's a lot of things. Look, it's there's a lot of clubs in Australia that are now taking over the responsibility of looking after their youth. But the resources are not great. But that's not the only problem. The problem is that 20, 30 years ago, when we had less money, when we had less support from the governing body, we were able to produce a lot more players for the European market. The golden generation of Australian football was in 2006 when we played in Germany. That Australian team was mostly made up of the players that played in the old NSL, players that came through the club ranks and went on and played for some of the big clubs in Europe. Or when I say big clubs, relatively good clubs in Europe. And we thought we were on the right track. The problem is when the A-League came, they ignored the development of players and focused only on senior competition, and that put us behind. So we are now paying the price of not looking after our youth when the A-League commenced, and now we're seeing the outcome. The results are not there. I think it's turning, it's changing, it's getting for the better, but it's still a long way behind of some of our colleagues or some of the countries in our region, like Asia, for example, not to mention Europe and South America. We still train only 3 days a week for our elite football developers, players, which isn't enough. When you compare that with Europe and in Asia, some countries, South America, where the players train 5-6 times a week, then play games on top of that. So we are still a long way behind, and we need to change that. The sooner we change that, the better it will be. We need to get ex-players involved in our coaching. Our coaching accreditation is too expensive. It doesn't guarantee you any work, but it costs you a lot of money to just get a piece of paper to say that you can coach youth, not to mention senior football. So I think that should be made easier. We should encourage ex-players to get involved in the game and use that experience to, rather than when the players finish, they are lost to the game. So there's not only do we need to improve the quantity and quality of coaching, but we need to make sure that, as I said, we make it easier for them to get involved in the game.
Definitely, and I'll move from that topic to even a lighter topic and more tactical. Like, as a coach, what is your footballing philosophy like?
Well, look, my philosophy was always to play good, attractive football, because as a coach, I felt it is my responsibility to try and not only win football matches, but to try and do it in such a style that people will come back and watch you. And we are part of an entertainment era. We have to provide entertainment. You're competing in a country like Australia. There is so many things to do. The weather here, most of the time, is very nice. You have so many things that you can do. And football is competing with other football codes as well, other sporting codes. So we have to treat that as entertainment. So my philosophy was always, to play attractive football that would make it enjoyable for the players, but also entertaining for the supporters that would come to watch the games or watch it on television. Because, as I said, we're in that entertainment field that that is competing for supporters or public across many regions.
Definitely. And like another thing, like as you mentioned that basically it's a football is an entertainment industry which competes with other industries, like for the attention span of the public. uh, how much of a difference does like playing games behind closed doors impact the game?
Yeah, look, I'll admit, I'll be very truthful that I find it extremely hard to watch games now with COVID-19 situation behind closed doors and all of that. The entertainment, it's not the same. From a footballing point of view, I like nothing better than be at the game because you can see more as a spectacle. The other thing, it's the entertainment that the atmosphere that you miss probably more so than anything when you play behind closed doors, and not to mention the cost to the clubs and the football in general. I'm not sure how long we can continue. I know that in some countries you have to play because of the TV commitments and so forth, but really football without supporters is, for me, is not football.
Definitely. And like moving on from that, like I'll go back to your career, and you have managed a lot of good clubs and like have had a lot of success. But if you had to choose one club where you enjoyed your time the most, which one would that be?
It's a good question. I've been asked that question many times. Probably the answer that I give you will not be the answer that people expect, considering the some of the clubs that I've coached. But probably the two clubs that stand out the most were a club called North Geelong in Victoria, Premier League. When I started out as coaching, we won what is still an Australian record. We went from Division 1 to the Premier League and won. In each year, we won the championship, and we produced many good players. So at the beginning of my career, that was significant and an important event. And later on in my career, probably one of the biggest satisfactions was coaching a club called Sydney United. We won the Australian Championship. We had 7 Australian internationals in the team by the end of the season. Some of those players that played are now coaches all over, not only in Australia, but even in Europe. In the A-League today, we have players, Ante Milicic, who was Matilda's coach. He was in that side. Tony Popovic who's coaching Perth Glory. He was in that side. So there were just a couple. David Zrilic is now assistant at, I think, Chicago in MLS in America. So we had a wonderful team that played some fantastic football and produced a lot of household names in Australian football who not only went to play for their country, but also later on when they finished their football careers, playing careers, ended up getting involved in coaching careers and are now very much involved in the game. So they were the two most enjoyable moments. One was at the beginning of my career when I was a very young coach, still only 30, starting out. And the other one was probably in the middle of my career where I was very lucky to work so many wonderful players who went on to bigger and better things in their careers, not only in Australia, but in Europe.
Definitely. And like I just got this question in my mind, and like suppose you are going through a slump, like of course no manager will win all the games in his career. How do you motivate, suppose after 2 defeats in a row, how do you motivate the players?
Yeah, that's a good question. I went through that. I was lucky to coach some big clubs, but I was also involved with a couple of clubs that found it extremely difficult when I joined them. One of those clubs was Canberra Cosmos in the National Soccer League before the A-League, and they were bottom for 2 years in a row before I joined them. And I went from the top to the bottom, which doesn't happen too often, and was probably not a smart move on my behalf. when I made that decision. But I wanted to challenge myself and see what I could do with a smaller club. And I went there, and I think we lost the first 5 games after the club had finished last for the previous 2 years. And that was the most challenging times. But that made me a much better coach, because when you're winning, you're not learning as much. When you're losing, you have to try everything you can to turn things around. Motivation is just one of them. It's a very difficult and lonely place when you're losing game after game, and it challenges you mentally, physically. It challenges your players. It challenges the people around you, because you're always looking for the solution, for the right solution. How do you motivate them? Well, that's a difficult thing, because you need leaders. You need to have leaders. You have to have good people around you. But what you have to do is have leaders on the park. And if you haven't got them, you have to create them. You have to give them the confidence. You have to give them the belief that what you're doing is the right thing, and that they've got to visualize that, not only think about the short term, but the long term of what could happen if you believe in yourself and believe in your fellow teammates. It's very difficult, but if you persist with it, if you've got the right people around you, then I think you can get out of that. But until you are in that situation, you have not completed that coaching cycle that you need to do so if you want to be a successful coach, have a successful coaching career over a longer period of time.
Definitely. And you have had so much experience and you have seen so much in the game, and if you had to give a piece of advice to a young coach, what advice would that be?
I think to believe in yourself first, but believe in what you want, what you're about, know what you want, and know how to get there. A lot of coaches start out without really knowing what they want. When I was very young coach, I asked myself a question very early on. Do I want to be respected, or do I want to be liked? And there's a difference in that, is that if you want to be respected, you have to approach the game a little bit differently than if you want to be liked. You also definitely need to know what is it that you want out of coaching. Are you coaching for yourself, or are you coaching to get the best out of the people that you're working with? I think sometimes when I was younger, I used to confuse it. I used to want to impress the players so much that every training session I would come up with something different, rather than wonder and focus on what's best for the players, not what's best for me or show to the players how much I knew about the game, but to find out how they were able to understand and benefit from my coaching. So I think my advice to the coaching would be to ask yourself the question, what is it that you want out of coaching, and what price are you prepared to pay for it? Because it is a very, very a different challenge than when you are playing, because you are 24/7 thinking about football. You are thinking about every minute of the day about how you can make a difference. And a lot of coaches, when they get into the game, they don't quite understand how much time consuming it is, and what is it that they really are looking to get out of the game, and what price are they prepared to pay for it.
Definitely. And on that note, I'll ask you one final question, okay? And it's if you are given a choice, like suppose you're managing a team, and if you're given a choice to sign one of these two players, whom would you sign, Ronaldo or Messi?
That's a good one. You can't go wrong whichever one you sign, because Ronaldo and Messi are two of the very best. Look, the difference between the two, Messi's, look, there's no doubt Messi has all the skills in the world and can do things on his own and also bring other players into the game. Ronaldo is a supreme athlete, and I respect that because he puts so much into his game. You know, he works so hard at his game, and in my opinion, I don't think he has the talent maybe that Messi has, natural talent, but he works so hard to make up for it that it's very, very difficult to split apart. And if you look at all their statistics, you'll see that there is not much difference between the two, whether it be in goals scored, whether it be in the assists. The credit to Ronaldo is that he's been able to play at different clubs around the world in different competitions, leagues, and be successful. Not many players are able to do that. Messi, on the other hand, is very much played only with one club and has been sensational in that one club, and that in itself is a credit as well. But on an effort alone, it would be Ronaldo. But just my type of football, the way I like to play it, I'd have to go for Messi.
Definitely. And on that note, thank you so much, Branko, for talking to me, and I wish you all the best for your future endeavors with your school, whatever work you're doing with them, and hope you can produce more talents, which is a rarity in this world, okay, and right now. And hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you once again for coming. Take care, stay safe. Bye.
Look, thank you for the opportunity. One thing that I did fail to answer or talk about was when you asked me the most satisfying thing about my career and all of that. I suppose from the coaching point of view, those 2 points that I mentioned, but the other one was probably the success of my son Jason, seeing him play for Ajax Amsterdam and PSV, and you know, playing that part early in his career. That was probably the most satisfying and something that I would treasure for forever. And when we talk about development, it just goes to show that it can be done as long as you've got the willpower and are prepared to work hard and believe in yourself.
Definitely, and thank you once again for coming on the show, and I wish you all the best in developing much more talents who can go and play for Ajax and maybe other bigger clubs in Europe.
Thank you very much, and all the very best with your show.
Thank you.